Okay, we're all set. So we started a little earlier tonight. We're gonna, we're starting around 8. Brad's gonna, talk about college essays, the importance of framework, and we actually, some people sent in their sample essays. Brad's going to pick 1, maybe 2 of them, and we're going to use them as examples, which is actually kind of fun. It's like live, this isn't pre-rehearsed or anything like that. So you can see how good Brad is at critiquing. And
yeah, I don't even read them ahead of time. It's just random selection. So that's what we do.
And then we rearranged kind of the information a little bit. So for people who have students who are applying to more selective schools, I don't know, like Brad, what you would call those, the top
like
30.
Yeah, we say like highly selective, usually under 15% admission rates. It really has less to do with, let's say, a school ranking than just like acceptance rates.
So anybody is welcome to stay on, but we moved that information a little bit towards the end, just so that if people don't feel like they want to wait, or stay on that long, or it doesn't apply to them, they can, jump off. But anybody who wants to hear that information, you're absolutely free to stay on.
Yeah. Probably, and we're going to cover some of that towards the beginning, just like the real deep dive will be at the end. So if you can't stay on, it's totally fine.
All okay, right. So Brad, I am spotlighting you.
Awesome, fantastic. I love the spotlight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Also, some of you sent some essay topics that you're thinking about writing about. We've also included some of those in the presentation as we go. Debbie interrupts me very frequently as we go. So this always ends up taking just a slight bit longer than normally it does. But Debbie's comments are always awesome. If you have any questions as we go, Debbie is monitoring the chat, and that's one of the ways that she interrupts me as we go through all of this material. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We have a number of topics for today. My name is Brad Schiller. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Prompt. We're the largest college admissions application and essay coaching company in the world. And we'll talk a little bit about ourselves as we go. But the main things we're going to cover today are how colleges evaluate applicants, what colleges are looking for and aren't looking for in essays. That's where we'll also take a look at some of the topics that you all had submitted. We're going to talk about the ideal timeline for actually how you work on your applications, talk a little bit about Prompt's essay coaching. We'll do live feedback on at least one essay. And then at the end, we're going to do like a real deep dive into highly selective admissions, although you're going to get a lot of that benefit towards the beginning of this as well. Okay, great. Okay, so real quick about us, because you might want to look at some information as we're going and talking through the webinar. But basically, last year alone, we coached 6,000 students one-on-one, including hundreds of road to college families. And 98% got into at least one reach or target school, and 3 in 4 students got into at least one reach school, where they are below kind of the either a highly selective school or below the average academic profile for admitted students. And we're going to talk about why that's important kind of as we go today. But we have an extra special discount tonight. If you just want to check out prompt.com/road to college as we go, you can take a look at some of our one-on-one coaching options. We'll talk more about it later, but I just want to call that out at the beginning of this session. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is, what do admissions officers actually care about? All right, so why do we talk about this? Is because when you're writing your applications, that goes for your essays, your activities list, additional information section. We're going to talk more later about what you need to write. But as you're writing all of that, you have to think about your audience. Okay, so how are college admissions officers actually going to evaluate you? Okay, so what do they care about? And the one word that sometimes gets used by some admissions officers is potential. Okay, and I like to kind of distill this down into that your student will succeed in college and after they graduate, right? That is what they're trying to determine by reading the application, is that fact. Are you going to be successful at their college, and are you going to be successful after you graduate? So everything that we're going to be talking about tonight is related to that. Every piece of feedback that we provide on any idea about an essay or any essay draft that we get sent all comes back to this concept. And why is this really important? It's because think about what schools really care about. They really care about, one, their US News rankings, which is really important to them. And two, they care about getting tuition dollars from students, right? So students that are going to go to their school and they're going to stay 4 years, maybe a little bit longer, they're going to pay tuition that full time, they're going to graduate. These are things that help their US News rankings, is also kind of create more tuition dollars for them. And then they also like it when students graduate and are successful, because that reflects really well back on the school, which helps them recruit more students. And it also helps them get alumni donations and other things like that that are also important for the US News ranking. Okay, so all of this is really quite selfish actually for the schools, but this is what they care about, right? They care about some sort of indication that your student will succeed in college and after they graduate. And so how do they do that? Okay, so basically they're evaluating your potential for success using what they call holistic admissions. And it's not just academics, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but your grades, the strength of curriculum you have, like your APs, your AP scores, your high school test scores, that sort of information. They kind of bundle that up into a single score called the academic score. And then we have what's called the personal score, right? And this is all the non-admission stuff, right? So activities and how you write about your activities, your extracurriculars, essays, how you write about it, what you write about, recommendations, maybe an interview. And then schools have a bunch of other priorities that we're not going to focus on today, because these are things that you probably really can't affect too well yourselves, okay? And so how does this broadly work? Okay, so real simple, right? Your students' admissions chances are basically based off of their academics and their non-academics, which we call the personal score, all right? So the better that those admissions officers score you, the higher your admissions chances, all right? Pretty simple, but it's actually a little bit more complex than that. And in particular, I'm going to talk really briefly about both of these concepts, okay? So one is academics, okay? So we just saw that there's this academic bar, all right? Now, when you see that bar, you probably think, oh, a lot of students that apply to the school are below the bar. That's not true, actually, for the vast majority of institutions. And that's because as you're doing your college search, as you're determining where you're going to apply, you're generally thinking about it from the perspective of, what are my grades? What are my test scores? How do those compare to the stats of other applicants to that school? Okay, so students are self-selecting where they're applying, and roughly speaking, that means that 4 and 5 applicants to any college are academically capable of doing the work at that college. Okay, so if I had an 80% admission rate at my college, I could take all 80%, right? Every single student that's academically qualified, I can just take. Okay, but if my admission rate is less than that, then I need to start differentiating, right? I can either take strong academic students, I can take students with strong personal scores, non-academics, right? This is where it becomes really important, okay? And that is why, as the admission rate for a college or admission rate for a program like a computer science program, as that admission rate goes down, so that means the more applicants that a school has and the fewer that they select of those applicants, right? So there's a lot of applicants and they can take relatively few of them. As that admission rate goes down, essays, the personal score becomes more important, okay? And that's what you see here, right? So what's interesting is that while, almost everybody's above the personal bar, but to be strong on non-academic, strong on the personal score is only 1 in 5 applicants, right? We just saw that 4 and 5 2 and 5 applicants are strong from a academic score perspective. Only 1 in 5 are strong from a personal score perspective. And this really matters because the admissions rate, the acceptance rate, especially at highly selective institutions, is roughly 10x for students with strong personal scores as those with strong academic, with just sufficient personal scores, okay? And that basically means all the data basically shows, we can talk way more about this later if you want, but the general gist of it is, look, you can have a strong academic profile compared to other applicants, great, but that only increases your admissions chances by 3x compared to other applicants. You can have strong on-academics, though, can increase your admissions chances up to 10x, okay? And that's what we're talking about today, right? How do you prove that you're going to be successful to admissions officers, right? And successful in college and beyond? There's the academic side of this, right? A lot of that's set by this point. Now that you've taken your AP exams and that sort of thing, a lot of that's set, right? How do you actually write about some of your experiences in a way that's compelling enough that admissions officers are going to put you in that strong personal score category? Okay, that's the key. All right, Debbie, do we have any other any comments before I keep rolling through some stuff?
Not yet, but
because I went through that a little bit faster than sometimes I normally do.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Nope, I think we're good. All
right, cool. So let's talk about when essays matter and when they don't matter. Okay, so taking a look at that, right? A lot of this has to do with what we call, admit rate or admission rate, whatever you want to call it. And so the general gist of it is your writing in your applications, your essays, your activities lists, all that sort of stuff really matters for highly selective colleges. These are under 15% admissions rates. Selective colleges, which are 15 to 50% admission rates, where your academics are kind of in that sufficient category, right? But they're not strong compared to other applicants, okay? And it's really hard to know how you compare academically. One of the best ways to kind of just think about it is you can actually look at what is the test scores of students that are in the top quartile of accepted students at a given college. And that usually is an indicator that you might be in that stronger academic category. But it's really hard.
Chicken biryani.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. But that's really, really hard to tell. Okay. And then you can also be at large colleges where you're applying to highly desirable programs like computer science at the University of Washington, for example, is really competitive to get into, right? Because admissions at those types of programs, while the school, the college itself might be accepting 10,000 students, there might only be 500 going into a computer science program. And a lot of people are applying to that program. So the admissions are more to that program than to the school overall. And then also, and essays can matter more for desirable out-of-state destinations, right? Like the University of Michigan or those UNC Chapel Hill, if you're out of state, and applying to select certain types of programs, it can, the essays and can really matter because there's a lot of students with very similar academic profiles. Essays matter a bit less. Doesn't mean you shouldn't focus on them or try your best, but they just matter a bit less for selective colleges where your academics are really strong compared to other applicants, or just like large colleges with higher admissions rates, or where you're applying in-state or applying to less competitive programs. Now, unfortunately, this is great. This looks like, oh, this is really simple. It's actually really complicated because most colleges, you could find their headline admissions rates numbers, like how many students they accept, what percentage of students they accept. But it's harder to find like what is the acceptance rate to certain programs, like an engineering program or a drama program or a theater program or a music program, right? And that can matter a lot more in many cases as to whether or not the essays are important. So as I always say, just put the effort in, right? Essays are more about effort. It's about content and then explaining your content really well. So if you have compelling content, which most students do have really compelling and interesting things to write about, you might as well write about it in a really in a compelling way, which we're going to talk about today. Okay. The other thing that we're going to talk about before we talk about what to write about in your essays is how many essays are you actually going to write? For those of you who have not had students that have gone through the admissions process recently, you will be surprised that depending on where you're applying, you're going to be writing a lot of essays, a lot. Okay. So many students might only be writing the common application essay, and they might write a couple of what we call supplemental essays, so shorter essays that are for specific schools. But many of you on this call will have students that are writing 10 essays, 20 essays, maybe 30, 40. We have some students that write 60 essays a year. Some colleges have like 8 short essays that are maybe 50 to 250 words in length. On top of like the common application essay that's 650 words, right? So there's a lot of work to be done. And one essay is not necessarily more important than the other. They're just not, they're all the same, okay? Because it's not like they go through and score each individual essay. They're not like, oh, this is a great common application essay. The other ones weren't too good. But you know what? We'll score the common application essay really high, right? What they're doing is they're reading kind of the whole application holistically, and then they're giving a personal score based off of that. So all of those components kind of fit together, right, to tell your applicant's story and why they're going to be successful at that college together, okay? And, they're also going to be writing about their activities in the activities list. There's an additional information section. There's a bunch of different components, right, that fit into this. But we always find that this is sometimes surprising because you actually haven't looked at some of the essays, how many essays, and we'll take a look later, actually, because we have a tool for that, how to do that. Okay. All right. Debbie, do you have any questions before we get to what colleges are and aren't looking for in essays? Everybody's favorite part of the presentation.
Yeah, no, there was just a question that maybe you can clarify. When you say personal statement, really what that is, like somebody is just really wanted to confirm, is that the essay that you get to choose from the prompts in the Common App?
Yeah, so that's the most common personal statement. It's called the personal statement, the Common Application essay. There's 7 prompts to choose from, 650 words in length. But the personal statement, that same essay might be for like Apply Texas. There's a coalition application. There's some schools are not on the Common Application. So this all is, but they're all relatively, kind of the same category of essay, right? It's one essay that you usually use a lot across a lot of schools. And that essay is important, but all the other essays that you write for those schools are just as important. It just so happens that usually those other essays may not be the exact same essay you use across every school. Because each school kind of defines the other essay prompts that they want students to write. And some schools don't have those and some schools do, right?
Somebody else is asking, and I know you'll kind of address this later too, but during the summer, can my rising senior prepare for essays?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. You should be starting essentially now / early June. We're going to talk about why as we go. But this, and as we're talking about this, you'll start seeing like why is there benefit to kind of starting earlier. Okay. But I'll be more explicit about that later. So what are colleges looking for and aren't looking for in essays? Okay. So we just talked about, right, the entire purpose of the application is to prove your student will succeed in college and after they graduate. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that most counselors, most admissions officers, when they're asked for what are they looking for in your essays, they're going to say something like, oh, we want you to tell your story. Okay. Or we want you to just to learn something about you. Well, what's interesting about that is that is incomplete information that unfortunately drives a lot of students to write about the wrong things. Okay. And what you really need to do is it's about telling your story that proves that you're going to be successful in college and beyond. And the way that you do that, how do you prove success, is through your experiences, which we'll talk about in a second. But this also means is why like every single essay that you write is important. Every single part of your application is important. Everything combined basically shows who you are as a person, your personal brand, if you will, the traits that you have and exhibit that are going to prove that you're going to be successful. Because guess what? What you've done in the past and where you've been successful in the past and the traits that you have that have led you to have that success, those traits signal that you're going to be successful in the future, right? And that's what they're trying to accomplish. Okay. So this here is probably the slide that the most people gravitate towards in this presentation, and we get the most questions about, et cetera, and we also spend the most time on, because these are the 5 traits that colleges actually look for in applicants. Okay, so when we're talking about essay topics in a little bit, we're going to keep coming back to these 5 traits. When we look at the example essays in a bit, we're all going to keep coming back to these 5 traits. Everything we do is trying to associate what you're writing with one or more of these 5 traits. Okay, so let me discuss these traits and why they're important. Okay, the first and really the most important trait is drive. Okay, so these are students that whenever they're in a challenging situation, they are succeeding in that situation, right? They're getting through it. And not are they passively sitting by, just like specific actions that they take are resulting in them kind of being in a better position and getting through that challenge or getting through kind of any particular environment that they're in and improve it, right? So this is really about like personal growth, drive to make yourself better, drive to succeed no matter how long the odds are, okay? Drive really matters. So much so that when I was talking to the Dean of Admissions at MIT, which is my alma mater, the Dean of Admissions said, what we're trying to do is in a pool of really highly driven applicants, we are looking for students that are unusually driven. So in the most driven students in the entire world, they are looking for the students that set themselves apart as being even more driven. Okay. And that's just one example. I'm just using MIT because it's where I went to school. But when you really think about any type of institution, any type of college, this is really what they're looking for. They want students that are going to succeed because they know that you're going to come across some sort of challenging situation in college, and they want to know you're just going to push through and you're not going to drop out, right? You're going to go and be successful, and you're actually going to be better as a result of going through that challenge. The second is intellectual curiosity. So these are students that love learning just for the fun of it in their free time to gain a deeper understanding of certain subjects or topics in which they're interested in. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that most students are really intellectually curious, but they fail to actually write about this in their applications because they don't really realize that they're different. Okay. Your student probably has something they're really interested in, may spend hours per week kind of improving it, learning more about that skill, like interacting with people, like maybe in Discord communities or in Reddit online about like kind of improving their learning or, kind of interacting with people on different topics. Those are really important things for schools because they love it, students that are intellectually curious, because when they get to college, they're going to keep learning, right? And they're going to work on what they're really interested in, and they're going to succeed academically. And then they're also going to succeed in life because self-learners, people that love to learn, are just going to be more successful. This matters so much that there's like a famous essay at Stanford called Intellectual Curiosity that's focused on this. There's also at Emory University, their personal score that we talked about is actually called Intellectual Curiosity Score. Okay, so this is something that colleges really care about. The third is initiative. Okay, so these are students that are really entrepreneurial. Often they're finding themselves taking on leadership roles, whether formal or informal, but they're basically, no matter what they're a part of, right? Or they might be just like walking around and they're like seeing something, they're like, that could be better, right? Or whatever part of an organization they're a part of, they're like, there's a way that this could be better. And not only are they identifying how to make it better, they're actually acting on it, right? They're actually making it better, okay? Colleges obviously love students who take the initiative because they make the college better, right? They make all the activities, everything that students do in college better, right? They make all the classes and all the groups and classes of students, and they take on those leadership roles there, and they make that better, right? So really important, students taking the initiative. Fourth is contribution. So these are the students that no matter what group of people they're a part of, that group of people is far better as a result of their presence than not, right? So one way that I like to look at this is like, imagine that you weren't there. You weren't part of the extracurricular activity or part of a group of people that you're a part of. If you weren't there, how would it be different, right? How would it be different? And those are a really good way to spot like contribution, okay? Colleges love contributors. These are the people that are like the super connectors across the college community. They're the ones that make the college community, right? They're the ones that, one of the value propositions of the college is a really strong community. They want you to feel really close to the college. It's not just about academics, it's about learning from one another, interacting together. These are lifelong connections that you're going to make in college. And so they love these super connectors, these contributors, right? And then the fifth trait is diversity of experiences. So colleges are trying to find people with different life experiences, different ways of thinking about the world, and they're trying to put all those people together, okay? Because they add unique perspectives to the student body and people learn from each other. Additionally, this helps schools fulfill their mission because even at a school like Princeton, they don't want every single person going to work on Wall Street. Like they want people to go work on a lot of different things, right? They want their school to have an impact on every single geography in the world. They want politicians, they want the bankers, they want teachers, they want healthcare professionals. They want literally to have their fingers, or rather their alumni going and working everywhere, right? They want to have that kind of impact. And so that really does matter quite a bit, okay? So everything that you're writing about, right, in your applications needs to relate to one or more of these 5 traits. And where we often find that students fall down, and we're going to see that when we're going through some of the example essays, probably, because we always find this as a problem, is that it's really hard in a lot of cases to tie these to one or more of the 5 traits, or it's kind of a weak tie, right? It could be made way stronger, right? And this is so important. And everything that we do when we coach students is always tied back to these traits, right? It's always about identifying experiences that you have and actions that you've taken that you can write about that are related to one or more of these 5 traits. You don't have to cover all 5 of these traits in your applications. You want to focus on your strengths. You don't have to cover all 5 even when it's in a single essay, right? You might do 1 or 2. But this is the single most important thing that you can do in your applications. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about good topics, bad topics, basically. We're going to take a look at some of the essay topics coming up. But the key is when we're talking about these 5 traits, we always get asked, what is a good topic? What is a bad topic associated with an essay? And the answer is there's no such thing as a good topic or a bad topic. There's only topics that relate to 1 or more of the 5 traits. Those are good topics, right? So a lot of times you're told, don't write about the athletics. False, right? You can write about athletics provided that you can relate it to 1 or more of the 5 traits. Same with band, right? Same with drama/theater. These are common things that are harder, honestly, to write about from a topic perspective because they're not necessarily directly related to proving academic success. But if you can relate it to 1 or more of the 5 traits, they can be some of the most compelling essays that you can possibly read. Okay. So that's really important. When we talk about some of the examples coming up, we will touch on this. Okay. And then the final thing is that what did we just learn, right? We just learned that colleges are looking for the 5 traits. And yet when we find that students are writing these essays, what they're doing is they're going out and they're finding examples of essays. And parents, you are also sometimes causing, also guilty of this, right? You're looking at example essays. And what happens is it's so easy to latch onto the essays that are beautifully written, right? That have metaphors and analogies and this like prose and all of that. And guess what? Students try to mimic that. And guess what? None of those things are actually related to the 5 traits. Okay. Does a more compelling essay reading that helpful? Yeah, usually, but not drastically so. We see students get into every single one of the top institutions where you would just be like, yeah, that was a really clear essay, right? I understood exactly what the student was trying to say. I understand that they're really compelling, right? It's clear, it's readable, it's not creative at all, right? No metaphors, no analogies, it's not some beautiful prose. And guess what? The students still get it, okay? Maybe the student that's applying for creative writing, that's maybe not as much the case, but for everybody else, right? The 99.95 or 9% of students or whatever it is, you just need to have a really clear readable essay that is related to 1 or more of the 5 traits. That is your goal, okay? And so we're going to take a look at, I know there's been a ton of chat stuff. Debbie, do we have anything that comes in before we kind of take a look at some of the essay topics that were sent?
Well, you can address this maybe as an essay topic, but there's a concern about, should they mention anything about COVID? Is that overdone? And then kind of related, the idea that maybe a student doesn't have as extensive of activities, again, because of the COVID interruption.
Yeah, so obviously all the colleges know about the COVID interruption, and I think that there's still like a separate additional essay on the Common Application that you can write about, like if anything that was particularly important happened in like the COVID interruption and that sort of thing. Now, we're also at the point though where there's still like, you may not have as like many official extracurricular activities, but when we talk about like your experiences, official experiences, like in a school, like speech and debate club or on a school athletic team or whatever, is like, that's kind of irrelevant, right? Because a lot of students still have like these opportunities that they're going through on their own or with friends, like related to like self-learning. I've read great essays on like interpersonal interactions that people have had, where they've been like a huge contributor to like a friend group and friends that are, going through challenging situations, right? So there's so many different things that to cover, right? That's why we're not saying, hey, just activities. We're really talking about any of the experiences, anything that you've done or experienced in, really throughout your high school years, mostly is where you want to focus, can be really important and good content. I've seen really good essays about kind of COVID related things or COVID adjacent things, right? Where like COVID had a strong negative impact on a family in some way, right? Whether or not that was food insecurity, shelter insecurity, family members that got ill, or various other things like that. That end up being like, showing a lot of drive, showing a lot of initiative, showing these different traits. And it's not like some woe is me type essay. Okay, that is really important. So these are some of the topics that were sent in here.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you're applying to an in-state college in the same system, do you give them the same essay for like every school, or is it like different?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it depends, right? So, like if you're applying to the University of California system, for example, there's 4 350-word essays. They don't even like calling them essays; they're called questions technically, but they're basically essays. And you are using the exact same 4 essays across every single UC campus. Okay, and then you also have, though, let's say it's like you're applying to like Penn State, for example, which there's like a number of different campuses. Penn State's main campus will have, the common application essay, but they will also have a couple of shorter supplemental essays. And then some of the other campuses don't have those supplemental essays. Okay. In, I think, Wisconsin.
Hey, it's just not letting me turn on my camera. I was just wondering.
Sorry, go ahead. No. Go ahead, sorry.
Hello, auntie.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah. So the answer is like, you look at each individual school and they will have their essay requirements. And a lot of times they don't list those on the website. You either need to go into their application, which will usually go live in early August. If it's on the common application, August 1st.
Auntie, I cannot turn on my camera, man.
Okay. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Okay, no worries.
Last time, and then I'll have to ask somebody to leave.
All right. And so, we're just, we'll show you kind of a tool that we have that allows you to see all those essays, but each admissions department is kind of reviewing those separately, essentially, is kind of the way to think about it. So it's, using the exact same essay, if you can, is totally fine. Okay. All right. So let's talk about a few of the essay topics that were sent in, right? So here's one: moving across the country as a 6th grader. I read a lot of essays about moving, like a lot. Okay. Because it's usually some like relatively, it's a big change in somebody's life, right? Now, the challenge with this,
I gotta sneeze real quick. Achoo!
Okay, sorry, he's out.
Okay.
No, I'm not. That's the issue. Panic. Yeah. Ow.
Okay, gone. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you. So back to this, right? This topic. So we see a lot of essays that are associated with moving. Okay. And yes, it's an important time in somebody's life, but usually a moving experience and writing your entire essay about it, especially if it's before high school, it's hard to relate to one or more of the 5 traits. Okay. Number one. Number two is writing about that experience from just like the move as your entire essay. It's really hard to relate it to the 5 traits. So when we see a good essay, like what this is like the move is what we call an inciting incident, right? So it's something that causes a big change in somebody's life, but most of the essay is about, okay, the change has happened, and then how has the student grown as a result of that? What are the extra actions? What are the extra things that the student then went and did? Okay. Sometimes people use the move to kind of, almost change themselves in some way, right? So maybe they were very introverted, now they're very extroverted, right? They didn't have as many friends, and now they have a lot of different friends, right? So there's all different other types of things that they can write about that can relate to one or more of the 5 traits. But just writing about the move is challenging, right? There's another one like writing about race, right? Or writing about some aspect of your life that pertains to race. Once again, this needs to relate to one or more of the 5 traits. And in particular, a lot of times that we see this, it could relate to initiative or contribution, right? And realizing that, something happened to you and it affected you in some way, and then you went and took action kind of as a result of it, okay? And so that can be really compelling. We have another one here, Taekwondo, becoming a junior instructor. There's a really nice opportunity here to talk about contribution, in terms of like helping others, right, become, maybe there's some stories of like, hey, you took some kids that, were not doing very well at Taekwondo and they became black belts, or, those types of things as a coach, right? The mere act of becoming just a black belt is not that interesting, but the journey along the way or supporting others can be really interesting and compelling as the primary focus of the essay, right? You have another one where, and we see this a lot with just different medical conditions with different family members. And so having a sibling or having a loved one that has another condition and how that shaped them, their worldview, like how they supported that other person, how they may actually support or work with others kind of in their community or in their school community, like how has that actually changed? Not just like your own mindset, but the actual actions, the actual things that you have gone and done. That is the most important component of this. And that's similar to, spending time and, with, a grandmother's group home for foster kids, right? That has shaped you in some way. Well, writing about those experiences can be really interesting, but what you need to do is talk about the actions that you took, like the actions that you took that relate to one or more of the 5 traits to make things better. It's not just about like, hey, I had these interactions with some of these foster students, these foster kids, and that made me realize X about myself. Well, how did you use that realization, either doing something else in your life or to actually improve kind of the, interact with the foster kids and kind of improve where do those kids ultimately get to or succeed, right? Those are the things that really matter, is the impact that you've had, right? And then there's a final one here, starting a band. I think they also had like some adult music groups, those types of things that they've started. Obviously, that shows a lot of initiative, right? It also could show a lot of self-learning, kind of like booking your own shows, trying to figure out how to do that, right? Getting people to show up to your shows. I had a band when I was in high school. I didn't even think to write about it in my application essays at all. Didn't appear in any of my applications. Happened to come up in my interview actually for MIT. And when they make, like, your admissions officers make like 3 to 5 sentences of notes basically that sum up your entire application. Like, what did they remember or what was important? And that actually got mentioned, that my band, right? Never thought to write about it. But it can be a really compelling content, because just think of all the things you have to do to like create the band, write your music, kind of learn like to book your shows or do all these different things. Like, there's so many aspects of that show drive, intellectual curiosity, initiative, contribution, some sort of diversity of experiences. Like, it kind of can roll up a lot of the different traits into one. So that could be really compelling, but just writing about like your love of music is not that interesting, right? It's kind of actions that relate to one or more of the traits. Okay. Do you have any other topics or any other questions?
Yeah, there are a few good questions. One is good question about, does the essay topic have to relate to the major that you might be interested in, that you kind of declare on the application?
Great question. So some of the essays that you might write that are like specific to the school, they may have a separate essay that relates to, why do you want to do this major? That's really common. Or why do you want to go to the school? What's called the YS essay, right? Which you can hit on those kind of intellectual curiosity components. So your common application essay, this main essay, does not necessarily need to hit on that, but we do find that students that have a lot of intellectual curiosity and it's related to what they want to study in the future, or what they want to do in the future, that ends up being really compelling as an overall broader essay topic. And even if you have an essay that you're supposed to write on why you want to do this major, usually those students have so much content that they can fill both of those spaces pretty easily. So that's why I always say it's like, when you're writing an essay, one of the cool things you might want to do towards the end of it for these type of personal statements is provide a look to your future. Like, what do you want to go do, right? Now that you've told me about these experiences, what has that led you to want to maybe do in your future, right? And it doesn't have to be a specific job. It could just be like, hey, I've just learned, like, whatever I end up doing, like, it just needs to help, relate to like supporting and helping other people succeed, right? It could be something as broad as that.
What about an essay writing about mental health issues, and also particularly maybe any mental health issues that came out because of COVID?
Yeah, so that's really tricky, right? And the answer is, I've seen some really good essays on that topic, and I've seen more really bad essays on that topic, right? Because once again, we have to think about, like, what are colleges looking for, right? They want to prove that you're going to be successful in that college and beyond, right? And so when signals happen in an essay that says, hey, this student might not succeed in my college for one reason or another, a school is just going to say, I'm not going to take that chance. Okay. Because that's bad for them. That's bad for the school. Okay. And so what that means is that you can write about this topic, but what's really important is it needs to relate to personal growth, right? So you may have gone through those experiences, but what were the actions that you've changed, like way you changed, right? What are the actions that you went on to take such that you could show like all the improvements, all the things that you've gone and done, and that you're a better, you're a changed kind of different person now, and that you're now more likely to succeed in college and beyond. Like that's kind of what you're proving without explicitly saying, hey, I'm going to be successful in college and after I graduate. Right. And so it's very tricky. It's a difficult topic. And that's why it's really important for a lot of different topics to work with a coach that really understands what colleges are looking for.
Krish, do you want to mute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah. So Mr. Schiller, I was wondering so you yourself probably wrote a college essay to get into MIT, and then you're looking at hundreds of college essays now. How is the college essay as itself as a concept evolved, especially with the Common App?
Hey, shut up, man. You're brown.
Oh gosh, sorry.
Yeah, so you're wondering how's the college essay evolved?
Yeah, and how can we take advantage of those points? It probably got better, right? As new iterations of the prompt were published. How can we take advantage of what those small iterations are to create the best product possible?
That's a really good question, and I know that there's a lot of stuff here that's around to some degree it's hey, you can kind of game the SAT in terms of studying for it, right? How do you game the admissions essays? And by the way, it's just it's way harder, right? And there's not necessarily a very specific thing that colleges are looking for, because other than just related to these traits in general, right? So what you're really trying to do is pack as much really compelling information into as small of a space as you can, right? So it's about being really concise. I would say that's probably if you were to think through how do you use this really for an advantage, is to be so clear and concise with your writing that you're able to fit more and more compelling information in. So a lot of times we see a student that writes a really compelling essay or has a really interesting topic. Let's say it's shows a lot of drive. Okay. Then the question is okay, that's 650 words. How do you make that 300 words so you could provide 2 more examples of you being extremely driven, right? So now you have this essay that's Krish is really driven. Oh yeah, that's a really good example. And it's oh, Krish is actually really driven. Oh, no, just extremely driven, right? So it's really about not just relating to the traits, but and we talk about for highly selective, it's admissions, it's really how do I jam kind of as much content into a really crisp, clear communication, and really talk about the impact of what you've done. Okay, Chris, you had a follow-up? I think you're muted. You're muted still. Muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, Chris, we couldn't hear you. You were muted. Oh, I think he still is.
Yeah. No, he's unmuted.
My bad. My mic's over here. Okay. Is it important that those things that I've highlighted on my resume is being these were my most important achievements in my high school career? Is it important that I talk about those and refer to those things as I'm driven, or can I talk about something that's just a complete
Yeah. So the answer is, so that's a great question. Good questions, Rich, by the way. So when you think about your resume, it's kind of like a synopsis of achievements, right? Or what you did or what you accomplished in some way, right? Now, what's really important with the essay is to show how you did it. Okay. Because if you're, won some chess tournament, right? You could be just a random chess prodigy. Or you could have put in just unbelievably countless hours of work and started at the bottom and worked your way up, right? And really kind of just spent inordinate amounts of time, like really learning different skills kind of along the way. Now, that's way more compelling versus like the random prodigy that just like happens to be really good at it, right? The school would much rather have the student, the prodigy is nice, but you would like the prodigy that also like, did all the work, right? And so it's really hard kind of in an admission, in a resume to like show a lot of times like that you really did the work. And usually how you do that is you might like focus on like quantitative measurement of like, hey, I went from, somebody I thought was like a really good example like a couple of years ago was they took their basketball team that was like in last place. Then they joined their basketball team and they made like a performance improvement plan for every single player on the team, and then like held their own practices and like basically watched video and followed up with each player on how to get better. And then their team ended up getting first, right? So they went from like last to first in like 1 year. Okay. Now, if you just like wrote like we got first place and I was like the captain of my team, that's not as compelling as like what I just said. Okay. And that's the type of stuff that like is harder to sometimes come through in like a resume or activities list. And those are the types of things that you want to be focusing on in your essays. That's an awesome, really, really good question. Okay.
Last question. Then you can,
Yeah, then we'll keep rolling. We got a lot of stuff to cover, and we have a lot of time at the end to do more questions. I'll stay as long as everybody wants.
Okay, so Callan, did you want to ask your question? I can save this question for later. Oh, I think you have to make it a little louder.
Can you hear me now?
No, not
Barely
really.
hear you. Maybe you want to type your question into the chat. That might be.
Yeah, it's not coming. It's too low. We can't hear your question.
Panic. Who say IG?
All right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, might type the question. Let's keep moving a little bit.
I think he's on his microwave.
I'm saying, bro, that shit hilarious.
Okay, so let's talk about like how do you work on your applications, kind of the process that you want to go through. So what's really important is starting earlier. Okay, and why is this really important? Okay, a couple of reasons. One is you want to actually plan your content. Okay. And you want to plan your content that you're going to use across all of your applications. You're going to want to do that now. And the reason for that is that you can start identifying, and we do this with all the students that we work with. We identify what are the things that you could actually do now over the summer to actually improve your content even further. Okay. And so a lot of times, like we'll see as somebody that's like, oh, I went on this, like sometimes a student will be like, hey, I went on this mission trip and it was really impactful to me. And here's why. Like, that's nice, but how you're now back from the mission trip. Like, what have you done as a result of this new mindset or this new change in your life? And the answer is usually nothing. Okay. Now that doesn't make for compelling essay content, but what does make for compelling essay content is, hey, I went on this mission trip, I got back, and guess what? Like, my mindset really changed. And then here's the actions that I've took as a result of that, right? Here's how I changed. Here's what I did differently. Here's the impact that I went and had, right? And there's a huge number of things that students can do over the summer or even into the early fall that you could dramatically improve the content of your applications. That's why planning and thinking about your content now really matters. We have a lot of tools for doing that within Prompt, and that's what we do with all of our coaches. Then in June or July, work on your common application essay. Just get it done. Okay. If sometimes we leave blanks in those essays that are like, hey, we're going to fill that content in later as we kind of, as you see like how am I, like, what do I need to do so I could fill in and make that even more compelling, right? Then what you're going to do is like in July or August, like just get the application done for your top choice college. Okay. Guess what? Essays really matter. We just talked about like being really concise with your essays, being really clear with your writing. And when you wait till the last minute to work on your applications, like 90+% of applicants who submit their applications within 48 hours of the deadline, guess what? Your essays are not going to be as good. Just not. Okay. And you're not going to be one of the 1 in 5 students that actually have, strong personal scores, strong essays. Okay. So what you want to do is work application by application. You start with the one that you care about the most. And then you do your next 2 top choices, and then you work application by application. The goal is to always have your applications done at least a couple of weeks in advance of the deadline. Okay. That's really important. And what's cool about this is why you work application by application is that a lot of the essays start having overlapping content, right? So we're planning all the content that you want to use across all of your applications, right? So each application, you want to fit in all of this content, right? And that's why you work application by application, so you can kind of fit that whole story together that you want your admissions officer to understand and read about you. And so your real goal, though, is at the end of the day, is to just be really confident in the applications that you're submitting, right? You don't want to be 5 minutes before the deadline and be like, just scrambling to finish, right, and submit, because then you're relieved, yes, but you're like, could I have done more? And you don't want to be in that place. Not to mention, you want to do this before all of your activities. Everything just picks up again when school starts, right? You want to focus on your classes and your APs and all that sort of things. You want to enjoy senior year with your friends. And if you're done with your top 3 choice applications, you're in really good shape, right, heading into the year. So that's kind of the goal. And most of the students that we work with are done with their top 3 choice applications by the start of their school year. And we hold them accountable for making that happen. Okay. Talk a little bit about prompt and our essay coaching. We'll then take a look at least one example essay. We'll take a bunch of questions. We'll talk more about highly selective admissions. But as I teased at the beginning of this, is we have a special discount tonight only, which we'll talk about in a second. But just in terms of our essay coaching, why do we work with an application and essay coach like us, right? We're not helping figure out which schools you want to apply to. We're not helping you with all the financial aid components of things. What are we doing, right? We are making sure that you have applications that you and your student are confident in, right? And that admissions officers will really love, right? That's our goal. That is our primary focus. We are writing coaches, right? That's what we do. And the other thing that we do is we hold you accountable, right? Your student accountable, right? We want to make sure you complete your applications on time, well in advance of the deadline, so you don't stress about it. And our system kind of is automatically sending out reminders. You're agreeing on timelines and deadlines for when you're going to get stuff done. And if you don't get it done, guess what? You get reminders and you keep getting follow-ups and calls and that sort of thing to make sure you get the work done. And our goal is really, you want to save time, reduce conflict. Students that we work with, they're probably spending half the time or less actually writing their applications essays as other students. And it's because you're just working smarter, right? Not necessarily harder. And you also don't want to be fighting with your students over essays or providing feedback on different students' drafts. That stuff, leave that to us. We actually enjoy it, weirdly. So that's kind of the general gist of it. We work on essays, activities lists, additional information section, all the written components of the application is our role. As I alluded to before, 3 and 4 students that we work with are accepted to 1+ of their reach colleges, which is pretty unheard of. And we get many acceptances to every single college, every single year. We have 4.9 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot. We have, in our history, reviewed over 150,000 essays. Hundreds of high schools actually, and high school counselors recommend our services to their students. And one of the benefits is that we're half the price or less of kind of alternative or comparable essay coaching options. We also have just a bunch of free resources, or if you're on a free and reduced lunch program, you can attend free boot camps and even receive some free reviews of essays for us. Okay. We're the top 2% of application essay writing coaches basically in the world. You're actually more likely to be accepted to literally any college in the United States and globally, really. More likely to be accepted there than you are to actually join our network of coaches. And we have a very rigorous training evaluation process. And how we work together is you get both a writing coach, you get an application advisor. Your application advisor keeps you on track, making sure that you're getting the stuff done on time, and your writing coach is working with you across your applications, right? That is essentially how we work from the beginning to the end of the process, from planning all the stuff that you're writing to writing every single one of your essays, such that you're confident in what you're submitting. We also have these small group essay boot camps, which many students do as well. And you attend in small groups these couple of sessions to work on your essays and get written feedback on each of your essays. But the one-on-one coaching is definitely significantly more popular than our small group boot camps. So you can go to prompt.com/road to college. I think Debbie will probably throw that in the chat. But you'll see there kind of some options. You can just go ahead and buy stuff. You can also book a call with us if you want to chat through your situation. But your satisfaction is entirely guaranteed. You get a full refund if you're not satisfied kind of after your first call with your coach. We highly recommend doing this. And tonight only, we have extra discounts. So you can get an extra $10 off one-on-one coaching on your Common App personal statement essay. Oh shoot, I think I actually
not 10.
some wrong prices.
Yeah.
So let me go to the that's my bad. I apparently did not make a change there from some because we had some real early bird specials about a month ago. So let me just pull up the website. So you can see tonight let me see here if this is up. Yeah. So special discounts for tonight. You can get an extra $10 off one-on-one coaching. You can get an extra $50 off our 3 schools, and you can get an extra $150 off tonight working on every single one of your schools.
That's in addition to the other discount that we're running.
Yeah, there's another discount. So tonight only, there's this extra discount, either $10, $50, or $150 dollars. So we highly recommend taking advantage of that. You can do that this evening. And it will be good until our development team wakes up in the morning. Okay. And so we highly recommend doing this because to get started on your applications now is better. As we just talked about, you're going to get more benefit out of it, and prices do kind of continue going up, or less discounts kind of later in the summer as we fill more and more of the slots of the thousands of students that we support each year. Okay. All right. We'll take some questions on that as well. But what I'm going to do, and as I said, go to prompt.com/road-to-college. You can get something now there. I'm going to go ahead and randomly pull up an essay that was sent into us, and we're going to talk through it and provide some feedback on it. All right. So let's see, what do we have here? All right. So we have an essay, discussion, accomplishment, event, or a realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Okay. I'm going to read this out loud. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how does this relate to the 5 traits or not, how to improve it, that sort of thing. Okay. This is what we do as writing coaches. I have not read this essay.
So take notes if you wanted to see if it relates to one of the 5 traits.
Yeah, that's always good to do. Drop that in the chat, by the way, like anything that kind of jumps out at you, like how does this relate to proving success in college and beyond? How does it relate to the 5 traits? Okay.
Brad, do you have it in a Word doc? Could you share the Word doc so they could read along as you're reading?
No, I'm not going to share the Word document because somebody sent it in and I don't want to send it out to others. Right. So, but I'm going to read it out, read it out loud, and you can kind of see it on the screen. I think it's shared on my screen, isn't that?
No. Oh, I didn't mean to send it out. That's what I meant, to share it on the screen. It's not.
Oh, it is shared on the screen, isn't it?
No,
I'm sharing my screen. What do you see?
We're seeing the prompt.road-to-college page.
Is this working now?
You might have to unshare. Did you unshare?
I just clicked to share it, and then apparently we're back to not sharing. Okay, cool. Now can you see it?
No.
Weird, because it says I am sharing it. Real cool. Thank you. Thank you, thing. Let me see here.
Oh, there it is. Got it.
Oh.
Now we see it.
Oh, there was I have 2 files open, and I think it was showing one and not the other. I think what's going on. Let me just share both then. Okay, cool. Can you see this one?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
It says discussion, accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and new understanding of yourself and others. All right. So, have you ever had your clothes pulled off by a monkey? I will never forget that moment. I was visiting a Buddhist temple in Burma. I was wearing a traditional longi, which is a long piece of cloth that you wrap around your waist and wear like a long skirt. All of a sudden, I felt a tug at the back of my longi. When I turned around, I was face to face with a monkey who was trying to pull my clothes off. I was so scared, I screamed and grabbed my longi before the monkey ran away with it. This was one of my many unforgettable and challenging experiences I had during the 6 months I lived in Burma in 2014. It wasn't my first time living abroad. I lived in Mexico, Guatemala, and Colombia. I also spent 3 summer months traveling around Costa Rica with my mom and her college students. Living in Burma was the first time that I really felt like a foreigner. For the first couple of weeks, I went everywhere with my mom to her classes at the University of Mandalay. on outings and exploring the city. I was surrounded by new sights, sounds, smells, and tastes. The excitement of those first couple of weeks turned to dread when I was informed that I was going to be starting school. Although I attended an international school, I was the only non-Burmese student in the whole school. At first, students were curious about me, but after a while, I felt isolated and alone. When I arrived each morning, I did not have any friends to play with. One teacher took pity on me and played basketball with me. How could I make friends at the school when all the kids spoke a language I did not understand? At one point, I got so frustrated that I did not want to go to school anymore. There was only one thing that I looked forward to each day, and that was playing soccer. On the soccer field, we spoke a common language: pass, shoot, goal. Running around on the field gave me a sense of freedom and made me feel like a normal kid again, not an alien from another planet. Slowly, I began to learn some Burmese words. I made a little song to help me remember them. I started to make some friends and became best friends with one boy. After a while, I understood that the kids were not trying to be mean by excluding me. They just did not know how to interact with me and did not want to speak English all the time. By the end of the 6 months, Burma felt like home, and I did not want to leave. There were many tears on our last day when many people came to our house to say goodbye. I feel very fortunate to have had this amazing experience and opened my eyes to a different culture and lifestyle, and helped me understand how many people may feel who come to the US and do not know how to speak English and have to find new friends. I know how hard it is, but I also know how enriching it is to live in other countries, learn new languages, taste different foods, and make new friends from around the world. It's not easy to be pulled out of one's comfort zone, but now that I survived having my clothes pulled off by a monkey, I think I'm prepared for any curveball life throws my way. All right, so drop into the chat anything that kind of jumped out at you specifically related to the 5 traits or things that just might prove success in college and beyond. Please drop that into the chat. Debbie will include some comments there, and the W and I are going to chat about this. If this is your essay and you want to come on live and chat with me, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, send me a message because I prevented anybody to unmute
themselves.
themselves.
Oh, look at you. Look at you. You figured out how to do that.
Right,
that's great. I'm surprised you didn't mute me along the way.
Right.
Great.
Okay, so somebody said that this shows diversity of experience.
Okay.
Entertaining and engaging, but did he do anything afterwards to help people in the US?
Mm-hmm.
I would also say it is using drive, diversity of experience, because of the moving to different countries with different culture, a different culture. Interesting, but doesn't show how he used it for a bigger purpose.
Yep. Okay. So there's a, like, as I'm reading this, so like one of the most important things is helping your reader understand, like, what is the purpose of your essay. Okay. And while a lot of these essays don't necessarily have like a traditional thesis statement, if you will, it does need to have what I call a guiding sentence or sentences, right? Like, I need to help the reader understand from the beginning of my essay to the end of the essay exactly what is happening and why and how is it relevant. Okay. Because after I read this, I'm like, I don't know how any of this is relevant. Like, how is this relevant to this student going to be successful at my college? Okay. Getting your clothes pulled off by a monkey. Yeah. Kind of funny, kind of interesting. But guess what? Doesn't prove success in any way, shape or form. Okay. That you're going to be successful. Doesn't exhibit those 5 traits. So I'm left wondering, like, how is this relevant? Right. How is this? And so when an admissions officer reads this, they're reading, they spend about 8 minutes on average per application, right? To read the entirety of the application. That means they're spending 1 or 2 minutes here. And as soon as they're thinking, I don't know how this is relevant, I don't know what this is about, their mindset automatically goes to, okay, I got to read the rest of it, but it's kind of like a lot of nothing, right? So it's kind of placing the student in that, sufficient kind of personal, category. And so you never want your reader, no matter how compelling the rest of the essay is or the rest of the content is, and this could be improved fairly dramatically, which we'll talk about, is that as soon as you lose that from your admissions reader, you're going to be in trouble. Okay. Then this is also something that happened in like 2014. Now, that doesn't seem like that long ago for me, but I'm getting old, I guess. But that's like when this person was probably like what, 9 or 10. And so like that was a while ago, and there's not a lot of stuff that's more recent, right? This is a 6-month experience. And while it's nice that they've lived a lot of different places, like just having lived a lot of different places doesn't prove that they're going to be successful in college and beyond, right? It might have, okay, and maybe there's some diversity of experiences, but it's not proving it to me, right? It just says they've lived a bunch of places, right? And it was a long time ago, right? That's kind of the sense that I'm getting. And there's some nice stuff in here that's like, okay, maybe there's like this inciting incident in this student's future where this moment of being in this Burmese school, international school, and not having friends, and then realizing that they need to learn Burmese to have friends because they didn't want to speak in English so much. And then they had a really great experience. Like that could be an inciting incident. That could literally just be this entire essay, such it could be the first 3 to 4 sentences of an essay that's really about kind of personal growth and their overall journey and what has happened after this, and kind of the contribution that they've given to others that may have lived similar experiences, right? And so that to me is something that can be, you know, made to be extremely compelling, but is something that is, you know, a bit you know, difficult or tricky here, you know, in terms of reading through this. Okay, Debbie, did you have any other comments on this?
No, I mean, just similar. Somebody had said it shows that the student's able to adapt to new environments and new experiences. I mean, somebody mentioned kind of just what you said. This happened 8 years ago and doesn't show really much growth since then.
Yeah, and by the way, like this is a very common thing where people like when you read a lot of other essays, right, that are out there that are supposedly great examples of great college essays. Number one is like, you're not really sure, is it actually a great college essay? Number two is, you know, maybe the student got into a college in spite of this particular essay than you know, instead of because of it. And number two is that people tend to latch on to the wrong things, right? They're latching on to, oh, look at this experience. I have something similar, so I'm going to write about that, right? But in reality, the essay is not about like, hey, I lived in a bunch of different countries. The other example essay you might have read, it might have been about one or more of the 5 traits, right? And so you're kind of latching on, where it's very common for students or parents or many people to latch on to the wrong things in terms of what colleges are actually looking for in the essays. And they're looking at, hey, I need this like metaphor, this really cool story about how a monkey, you know, took my clothes, you know, like ripped my clothes off, right? That's not proving success. Debbie, should we read one more or should we move on? Show of hands if everybody wants another one.
Yeah. So, and we have another one, or we also
put a hand up. Okay. Do we have a lot of hands? I can't see it. Oh, we have a lot of hands.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do another. Fine. We'll do another. Here we go. It's pausing screen sharing again. Wonderful. Let me try to make this happen here. Okay. Can we see my screen?
Is this the plucked from the grapevine essay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Got it? Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
All right. I've also not read this one, so let's see how this goes. Plucked like a grape from a vine was how I felt at the age of 5 when I was taken directly from pre-K, put on a plane, and landed in Rome, Italy, to live for the next 2 years. I left a cluster of 15 neighborhood friends that played together every day just outside of Chicago's gated townhouse community. My best friend and I shared a wall that allowed us to yell goodnight to each other. We did everything together. I was crushed for many reasons. I lost all my friends. I did not speak the language, though my Roman-born father taught me some words in my early years. I did not know anyone other than his immediate family, who fortunately spoke English occasionally. I had no friends to play with, only my mom, who took me sightseeing to see all the ancient Roman ruins, which I could have cared less to see at that age. My parents scrambled to find a school to attend and finally enrolled me into a Catholic academy that I later realized was a fully immersed Italian-speaking school. I thought my first day would be the worst because I had no idea what was being said, followed by having no one to play with during recess, and they had already established their friends from previous years. I did, however, find one boy that had an American mother, so I latched onto him in hopes we could be friends. It turned out he didn't take to my friendship attempts, and what followed was full-on bullying that devastated me. It got so bad that my mom and dad had to get involved. It took me 6 months to learn the language so I could fit in and speak fairly well. In that time, and over the course of 2 years, this quiet, shy girl found her voice and began a transformation that helped me become a more confident and perceptive person. I formed a bond with a sweet Italian boy and his family that played with me nearly every day during such after school. Through his friendship and a little time to grow and mature, I eventually learned at an early age how to be more comfortably interact with another culture, its foods, but especially their people, not only through language, but also through opening myself up to much more than I ever thought was myself capable. They have since visited us in Chicago, and we continue to wish each other well on birthdays and special occasions. Trials and challenges will continue to arise throughout my life, and I will have choices to make in how I deal with them. Do I want to be a victim or a victor, a whiner or a winner? I cried a lot during this time, but I eventually figured all out that these challenges allowed me to grow and learn. By putting one foot in front of the other, I persevered in learning a foreign language. This in turn led to a confidence that proved how I can move forward in life by breaking down largely insurmountable issues into smaller, more achievable tasks. History and life teach us that more times than not, we succeed, not in spite of our challenges and difficulties, but because of them. Grapes convert into wine, a symbol of transformation. It's nature's mirror, showing us an ongoing process of growth, renewal, and transformation. I have a long way to go, but I think this early exposure, as hard as it was a learning experience that will stay with me and continually help me to renew myself from that plucked grape into mature wine. Okay, so this is a very similar essay to the last one. So you could drop in some comments if you want, but I'm going to highlight a couple of different things, even though the same comments of the last one is, still hold, right? And especially, I think, one, your essay cannot wholly be about generally something that happened before high school.
This is actually pre-K.
Yeah, and this is very okay, but the other one was pretty young too. And while that can be an inciting incident, right, of a few sentences tops, it cannot be the full essay, right? Because who you were when you were very young is very different than who you are now. And what they want is somebody to understand who you are now, because that's going to prove you're going to be successful in college and beyond, right? This growth opportunity back then is kind of irrelevant, okay? Number one. Number two is, as you can see here we have a forced use of a metaphor, okay? And what does that signal to me? As soon as I read plucked like a grape from a vine, I was like, here we go again, okay? Because most of the metaphors that people, or analogies that people use in their essays are poor, okay? Very, very, very poor. And in particular, this one, it's like, okay, now we have a grape, wine. Yeah, it's not something I always see, but it's really kind of trying very hard to do something that is not necessarily related to kind of the rest of the story in a meaningful way. Okay. And then you have to look at the end and like, okay, we have to go back to the analogy. Most of this stuff is not necessary. And what we have here is a lot of philosophical pontification, essentially. Okay. And I see this in essays all the time, right? It's like, hey, we need to show our philosophy on the world, right? Guess what? Telling me about some philosophy, or like, hey, I'm this different person, like that doesn't prove that you're a different person, right? It's just, you're just telling me that you're a different person, or you have this outlook on life. Instead, it's like, okay, well, if this is true, if this really changed you, what actions have you taken since then, right? So you need to prove it to me. So a lot of this type of language is not particularly useful in essays, right? You're using a lot of word count without really doing too much. So if this was like a really, really important experience in life, you could pretty much reduce this entire experience down to 3 to 4 sentences probably, and then kind of build out kind of the rest of the essay around this, either as this is the introduction or a different introduction that then leads into like, here was this inciting incident that happened that led me down this new path in life that I probably wouldn't have gone down otherwise if it wasn't for this particular experience.
So Brad, I'm curious, what would one of your essay coaches, if they got this essay, how would they interact with the student? Like, what would they tell them to do next?
Well, first of all, is if you were working with us kind of one-on-one and we were doing like the essay planning instead of just written feedback, this probably essay would not have existed.
It wouldn't have gotten this far.
Yeah, to be honest, right? So, the first thing that we do, and I'm gonna show my screen and kind of how our system, broadly works. And I'll pull that up and just show a couple of tools that are free as well to students. Is that so within our system, we have this thing called like brainstorm essay ideas. Okay. And so we have these tools that kind of guide students through what we call the application plan. And here they're kind of identifying which of the 5 traits are they, are the most compelling about them, but then they're actually brainstorming content that are related to these 5 traits. Okay. So we have a bunch of different questions that are related to the 5 different traits. These appear actually in the order of kind of the ranking of which traits are more compelling for that student. And then they're like filling out their content and they're building out content associated with this. Okay, they can see examples, tips, and things kind of along the way. And all of the students that we work with do this before they do their first call with the writing coach, and our writing coach reviews this. Then during that call, what we do is we sync these experiences kind of from these brainstorms and we build out really detailed content. And most students will have somewhere between like 4 and 8 like really compelling pieces of content that relate to 1 or more of the 5 traits. And then we basically take those pieces of content and we match those up to different essays that you need to write for each of the applications. Okay, that's kind of how the system broadly works. Now, a lot of students may have written an essay that they want to share with us, in their English class or something, kind of post APs or in their second semester of their junior year. We're happy to take a look at that. There's usually like nuggets of interesting things that end up in there, like we just saw. It's like, okay, this is an interesting experience. Maybe it is a piece of a broader, arc or narrative type of story and experience. And then that definitely can be the case. But our goal is really to kind of have these like, how can we like, put together a lot of kind of interrelated, really important, valuable pieces of content and match those up to different essays that need to be written. And there's also a really cool tool in here, and this tool is free. If you just create you can create a free prompt account, come for the free resources. I can show you how to do that. But you can actually add all the schools that you're applying to here, for example. And we have I think I have did not refresh this before. But basically, we have every single essay prompt for every single school. So you can come in here. I already had University of Michigan on my application. I can actually see the essay list. So I can see every single essay that I need to write for the University of Michigan. And I can see extra essays that I might need to write as well. So they have certain, like, let's say I'm applying to the Ross Bachelor of Business Administration. They have 2 other essays that I need to write. So I'm going to add those kind of to my list. And when we work with students, we're kind of going through here and we are kind of matching content or matching similar essays kind of across different schools, and we're using our system to do that. And then the students are writing these essays in Google Docs and submitting them all through the system. So this is really useful to kind of come in and at least like input the types of schools you're applying to. And you see all the different essays that you're going to have to write. That's within our system. We pull all that information kind of into our own database. We go through every single application within like the Common App and all the other school applications to do that. Okay. And so if you want to just access those materials for free, under all the pricing that we have here,
Yeah, there it is.
you can see here are the free resources. Click here to sign up, right, for this. Okay. So you can do that and access the free resources there, but I highly recommend using a writing coach to just guide you through this. We have a lot of students that just use us for one-on-one coaching for just like the personal statement, the common application essay, and we'll take them from the beginning of writing that essay to the end of writing that essay. And then you're in a really good shape, and you then might decide to upgrade later into one of these. But if you know that you're like, hey, I'm applying to selective or highly selective institutions and I want support for 3 of my schools or all of my schools, we highly recommend just doing that now.
Yeah, and Brett, maybe you could talk a little bit. There have been some questions about the packages and like really what does like particularly, well, there was a question about the all school. What does that mean in terms of unlimited? Does that include all supplements related to whatever schools?
Yes, every single supplement for every single application. Okay, that you're doing. It's a lot. You know, I'll be honest. Like people that use this, a lot of times they're writing 30 to 50 essays kind of across their applications and are getting like 40 hours of one-on-one coaching support across like video calls and written essay feedback across all of their drafts. So that is like very common. But the reason why it's unlimited, when we say unlimited, we mean unlimited. But one of the things that we find is we know kind of, because we work with so many students, like what is the right or kind of ideal amount of interactions. And so we kind of include that, within this. And then as students are like, hey, we actually need more, our writing coach will actually recommend more, or our application advisor might recommend more, or a student might request more. And we always grant those requests, but sometimes we just like to understand why that request is happening, because we want to like head off like any like concerns or hey, I'm thinking about X, or something different, like, oh, why are you trying to book another call? Like you just finished your common application essay. It's like, oh, I'm concerned. Like I'm a little unsure about my common application essay. It's like, okay, let's have a conversation about that, right? And so we're really working closely with each student throughout the entire process.
Okay, Brett, do you want to jump to any like information about selective schools?
Yeah, let me talk briefly about highly selective institutions. And I think there was just probably more questions about highly selective institutions than anything. But as I said, like, please, feel free, you can email me, and you can drop this in the chat too, if you want, brad@prompt.com. If before you make a purchase, you want to talk to a writing coach, you can click talk to a coach about your situation first and book a time with us. We highly recommend doing that. But the easiest thing to do is like, just buy something, because we'll schedule your onboarding call with your application advisor, and they'll answer any questions you have. We'll get you assigned with a writing coach, and you're off to the races, right? And as I said, it's fully guaranteed. So if you're like, hey, I don't like my writing coach or whatnot, you can do that. If you're just doing if you're not applying to a selective or highly selective institution, but you just want to have a great essay, we highly recommend like our small group essay boot camps. Have a lot of students that go through them and are very successful. But roughly 3 to 4 times as many students use the one-on-one coaching program than the small group boot camp. Okay, so just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And if you buy the small group boot camp and you can't make these dates, we'll probably have one again later this summer for Road to College students that you would be able to attend. But you can go and head and buy that now if you need to, or you can buy it now and then switch time later. So let me talk briefly about highly selective admissions. And my thing is just having all sorts of difficulties today. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
No, it's not. Zoom is having some problems today. It's just not doing what it wants to do. Okay, screen share is just a mess. Okay, cool.
It might come back.
Still, it does not want to. It says that it's being shared, but can you even see any slides? Because I cannot see my own slides.
No.
Yeah. Wonderful. This is not a strong showing by Zoom right now.
No, it's just whiteness.
It's very weird, because it's actually saying that it's being shared, but it will not show it on my computer for some reason. It's very strange. Let me see if I can do something weird and pull it up. If not, we can just talk about it, which is fine too if we have to. Let's try this again.
Yeah,
All right.
yay,
We're back.
yay,
We're back.
yay.
All right, so we did that. Let's talk about highly selective admissions. So, we took a look at a couple of charts before, and I'm just going to bring them back up to really like illustrate this point around what happens in highly selective admissions, right? And so basically what happens is like we went through thousands of pages of Harvard court case documents and really dissected what actually happens in their admissions process. They were required by law to like release a ton of data because there's a Supreme Court case right now that has to do with the Harvard admissions process. So we went through all that data, and that's kind of like where you really get some granularity on like what happens in highly selective college admissions. Okay, so what happens, right? And we saw this chart before, but this is like with the numbers on it, right? This is what happens, right? So you have this academic score distribution, and even at Harvard, right, 4 and 5 applicants essentially are above their academic bar. So Harvard gets about 60,000 applicants a year now. That basically means that roughly 50,000 applicants a year for 2,000 acceptances, Harvard believes they're academically capable of doing the work at Harvard, right? And this isn't just Harvard, this is MIT, Stanford, any of the Ivy Leagues, Northwestern, the list goes on, right? It's the same situation because a lot of it's the same types of students that are applying with obviously the same types of academic profiles and scores, okay? And so what that means is, and it's not like, what they do is they bucket these into different categories. They actually give these a number, okay, a ranking. Like exceptional is 1, a ranking of 1. As you can see, it's 0.5%. It's barely anybody in any given year. And the strong academic category is roughly 2 and 5 of the the applicants that Harvard gets. But when you're in the strong category, it's not like they're like, hey, some student has like 10 points higher on their SATs, so that student's better. No, it's just like all those students are the same. Basically, is how they group them, right? They're like, they're the same kind of academically. So then they start looking at kind of other factors, right? The non-academics, some of those other factors that we talked about before about like athletics or legacies or geography or other things that schools kind of tend to care about. Starts coming to play in terms of admissions chances. But this is really important. And so what they do is these colleges take all of your academic information and they basically create a single score with it. At Harvard, it's called the academic index. And at Harvard, 8,000 applicants a year get 80 out of 80 on their academic index. In other words, a perfect score. So you can have 5s on every single one of your AP exams, okay? And I've taken like 10 AP exams already and have a 1,600 on your SAT, and you still won't be in the exceptional category for academics at Harvard and most highly selective institutions, okay? Like you need to do something above and beyond, that, right? So many of those students have done like published research or other things like that, that end up in that category, okay? And so most of the time, like your student is probably in the sufficient or strong category. That's fine, right? But keep in mind, like, the exceptional category has like a 60-something% admission rate, but strong is only like a 12%, sufficient is 4%. And this is data from 2015 to 2019 when Harvard got 50% fewer applications than they do now. So this is back when they got 40,000 applications a year than now 60,000, okay? So this is just, I like to kind of signal this is that, hey, you think you have a really strong academic profile, but what you really need to do is focus on your non-academics because everybody has a strong academic profile that are applying to these institutions, okay? One other thing I'll just mention is that, and most schools don't publish this, but at Harvard, this will give you a sense of highly selective admissions. The average admitted student to Harvard, by the time that they apply, have already taken about 6 AP exams and have an average score of a 4.7. Okay. That's not including the AP exams they're taking their senior year, right? So just to give you that, and the average student that does not get accepted to Harvard has done about 5 AP exams and has an average of a 4.3 on those exams, okay? So doesn't mean that, hey, I got a 3 or a couple 3s. It doesn't mean you're not getting into to Harvard or whatever, but you're probably in that sufficient academic category and not even the strong academic category. So I just like to touch on these stats to really show like why you think you're academically strong, you might be, right? But you're very similar to other applicants, okay? And that's why the essays component matters so much at these institutions. And way back in the day when I was applying, like I didn't know what to write about. You know, I was probably in this, you know, maybe in the strong academic category, probably. At institutions, and there was also way fewer applicants back when I applied. I didn't know what I was writing about. I got lucky. I got into MIT. I got rejected by, I only applied to 4 schools. That's how old I am. I got rejected by Princeton and Stanford. I got into MIT and University of Illinois. That was it, right. That was literally my entire admissions process. And I was going to do Caltech, but at the, I was sitting at my computer about to write my Caltech application the night before I had to mail it. You know, just so you know, there was no submitting online the day. And I was about to mail it, and I was just like, nah, I'm not even going to bother, right? And so you don't want to put yourself in that category either. But this is why this matters so much, is taking a look at this data. And then for like the personal score distribution, this is the Harvard data as well, right? 1 in 5 applicants have strong personal scores. So almost everybody that's applying to Harvard has really good like extracurriculars. Like they've done a lot of different extracurriculars. They've self-identified themselves as being like a top student at the school that they're in, right? So it's not just what extracurriculars you have, it's what did you do in them, and then how do you write about it? That's what really matters. And to Krish's, I mean, great question earlier, like how do you win, right? It's about being really concise and clear with your content and what you did, so that way you can write about more. And most students are not good writing really concisely, but a writing coach can really help you write very concisely. Okay, that is really important here. There was a student that I worked with a couple of years ago, because I work with like 2 students a year, and usually a student that's applying to MIT, because I enjoy working with students like that. And this student that I worked with, he had an amazing essay, and like if you saw like the first draft of his first essay, you're like, this is great. But then when you see the final essay that he wrote, he basically condensed all of the content in his first version of his essay into about 40% of the word count, so he could fit so much more in. Okay. And it was just like, it was like, if you read the versions, like they're night and day. Like admissions officer would read the first version and be like, this is great. And you read the next version, you're like, holy cow, right? This student is so driven, like so intellectually curious, just above and beyond, right? And that student got into MIT, Harvard, and Princeton, and then they withdrew their applications at other institutions. They probably would have gotten it everywhere.
And you know, it's really hard to write well and concisely. So if you can pull that off, that in itself shows a lot of skill.
Oh yeah, it does. It's so important, and it's not a skill that you ever learn in school, because you're told to write a 5-page essay, and you're like, I can barely get to 3 pages. So you're actually adding content, right? You're not writing like in a concise and clear way. And what writing coaches do, like what we train our coaches to do, is we help you identify, like, okay, you just wrote a bunch of content. Like, what was the stuff that actually really mattered? Like, what was the things that actually jumped out? And you, as a student, are also start getting really good at that, right? As you go through and work on this process. Okay, so this is really important, and why, like, this personal score, the essays, this also includes like interview recommendations, that sort of thing. But the stuff that you can really control is like the essay components of this, right? In terms of like, how does this actually work? Like, if you plug all of this data onto the same chart that we just looked at, as you can see here, the vast majority of applicants are basically in this like sufficient category in the middle. That has less than a 0.1% acceptance rate. Okay, right here. Okay, and so about 75% of applicants basically come from of acceptances come from this line. Okay, so it's basically like you're strong on academics, strong on personal score, like you're in really good shape. That's like really high admissions rates, essentially like 60% plus in many cases. When you're outside of that, you know, admissions rates go down, right? And they look at like many of the other factors that they're looking at, but you have a higher probability of acceptance if you're a sufficient academics and a strong personal score than if you're just strong academics and not a strong personal score. Okay. But what happens is that as admissions rates rise at different institutions or at different programs that you're applying to, what happens is this bar just basically moves. So Georgia Tech gets a similar number, or used to at least get a similar number of applicants per year as Harvard, right? But they accept a lot more students. So what they would do is you would start just pulling in like, well, a lot of this, there's not enough students with great essays, essentially. So they start taking a lot of, also they're like, hey, we're just going to take a lot of students with strong academics. We know they're going to be successful. They've run the data on it and say, hey, these students, the strong academics, they're successful at our school. We're just going to accept them. There's a lot of students just do not do a good job on the essays. They just don't. Okay. And so they'll just start accepting a bunch of those students, but you also get some students that are strong and sufficient, a higher number of those, in terms of personal score. So that's kind of like how it broadly works. One of the things that I'll just touch on is like, this matters by program very substantially, right? So if you're applying to like Carnegie Mellon and you're applying in engineering or computer science, like it's way more like this. Okay. And if you're applying for like liberal arts, it might be more like this. All right. So what major you're applying to really matters. And it even matters by the way you're intended, like, what do you want to do in your career? Like if you're applying to Harvard or an MIT or whatever, your intended major still matters, even though they say it really doesn't. And there's actual data on this. So if you apply to Harvard and you apply to that you want to go into a medical career, back in 2019, your acceptance rate was 4%. It's probably like 2.5 to 3% now. Okay. But if you apply to Harvard and say you want to be a teacher, your acceptance rate is like 11 or 12%. It's literally 3x that of somebody that wants to go into the medical profession. Okay. And the reason for that is, once again, we talked about is like diversity of experiences, right? They want people that have like different ways of thinking about the world, different things that they want to go do, because part of the school's mission is they want to have.
And this doesn't mean that people should just pick, being in a teacher now.
No. Yeah, you definitely not.
Because
right?
like your whole story kind of has to still support.
Yeah. It needs to fit, right? Like you can't be like, oh, look at how I like shadowed all these doctors and I love medicine. Oh, I'm going to be a teacher, right? Like just doesn't quite fit. And so it's hard to like, don't do that, right? But be aware. Right. Be aware that your, the non-academics components of your application may be even more important, in certain situations than in others. Right. And I'm not trying to like be here like, hey, let's scaring everybody, associated with admissions, but it's more of like, I'm trying to inform you of like, why is this stuff so important? That's
so
all.
Brett, a few good questions. One, I like this question. Joy says, we were taught to lead essays with attention grabbers. Aren't the first two essays examples of this, like that attention grabber that were in the essays that you read? Are college essays different? How do you think they were not good why do you or do you think they were not good attention grabbers? So what's about, talk about, is that a myth that, kind of that like first sentence should be like.
So you want your first sentence to obviously grab somebody's attention, right? But what you don't want is for them to think, how is this relevant? Because you can grab somebody's attention in the wrong way, right? Very, very easily. And so like those examples where it's like, okay, a monkey pulled off my clothes, right? If that was just your first sentence, that's enough, right? And then you can talk about like, how is that relevant? Okay. But instead I got like 6 sentences on the monkey, like the whole story of the monkey pulling off the clothes, right? Like that was not necessary. But and I didn't even need like a quote at the beginning, right? Or dialogue at the beginning. It could literally say a monkey, pulled off my clothes, right? And that's a good attention grabber. And that basically summarizes the first 6 sentences of that essay, right? So if you wanted to go down that path, you definitely can. But the way to grab somebody's attention is to basically say something that's like semi-surprising, but very short. Okay, so like you usually want your first sentence to be like 7 words or less in a lot of situations, right? In terms of the grape one, it's like, okay, here's a metaphor again. How is this going to be relevant, right? So maybe that metaphor really was relevant, but I need to get very quickly into like, how is this relevant? Why is this important, right? You never want somebody thinking, how is this relevant without basically answering how it's relevant in the exact next sentence or in the next few words. That's really, really important, right? So if you were saying a monkey tore off my clothes and then went into, why, right? Why was I in this situation, right? Like I was wearing traditional Burmese garb as I was living in Burma for 6 months, and I was in a school that, basically immersion in Burmese where I didn't even know the language and made no friends and, ended up making a bunch of friends and learning Burmese, right? Like that's literally the entire essay. And, and then you would say, and then what I would include there is like, here's a guiding sentence of, and this is where that led me, right, in my life, right? This is why it's so important where it's led me in my life, right? And so now I basically took that entire essay. It's now 4 sentences plus a sentence on why this was important. And then my rest of my essay is about what actions did I go do and take, right? And so, yes, you want to start in like a compelling and gripping way, but usually what you don't do is figure out how I want to start my essay or the story I want to use to start my essay before you figure out what you want to write about. Because that's a bad path, right? It's the same thing. Like you see these essay prompts for the Common Application essay. A lot of students are like, hey, let me select the prompt that I want to write, and then I'll pick my content. That's false. Don't do that, right? Pick your content, then select your prompt, okay? Because none of your admissions officers are going to bother looking at which prompt you're even selecting.
Yeah.
Like they don't. There's literally a prompt that's like, choose a prompt, whatever prompt you want, right? Just write on anything. Right? That's literally option number 7, right? So a lot of students make those mistakes.
So another good question about the why us essay for selective schools. How do you avoid sounding like you're just repeating the brochure? About why you like that essay.
Yeah, great question.
Why you like that college.
Yeah, so we have a tool, similar to that brainstorming tool that I showed you that walks through the why us essay. But basically what you want to do is you want to write out, what am I looking for in a college? Okay, academically, non-academics, extracurriculars, those types of things. And then research that college for each of the colleges you're applying to or the ones that you're writing for a YS essay. Research like, how does that college relate to what you're looking for in a college? And then write your essay on that. That's basically what you do, okay? Now, there's things that you don't include, right? It's like, hey, if you're writing a why NYU essay, don't say, I just really want to live in New York City, right? As the reason you want to go there. Everybody wants that, right? They don't, that's not a great reason. Instead, you're more focused on like academics, kind of what are you trying to accomplish? How does what NYU offer relate to that? In particular, you might mention some professors, you might mention some specific programs or classes or research opportunities, those types of things. What is the purpose of the YSSA, right? So the YSSA is it exists for one reason, okay? And it's to prove that you will actually attend that college if accepted. That's why it exists, okay? So there's a concept called demonstrated interest, okay? And why does this matter? Is that the US News rankings, what matters is what's called the yield, which is I accept the student, what is the probability that that student will attend, okay? So if Harvard accepts you, you have like 80% of the students that Harvard accepts are gonna attend, okay? If Tulane accepts you, it's like 25 or 30%, I think, attend, if I remember the numbers correctly. Guess what? US News uses that yield information for what economists call kind of like hidden preferences, okay? So if somebody gets into Harvard and Tulane, that usually means that they're going to choose Harvard over Tulane. That's effectively what yield means, okay? And so what schools do is they game the system. So they add a YSSA to basically show that you've done your homework, you believe you're a good fit for the school is a good fit for you, and that you're more likely, therefore, to attend that school if you're accepted, okay? That's why the YSSA exists. So it can read a little bit more formulaic than the other essays. That's kind of okay. You want to really kind of lean into, yeah, I'm really excited to attend the school. Like if I'm get into the school, I'm probably going to attend. Like those types of things need to kind of come out in that essay, that you've done your research, that you do understand that the school offers kind of what you're looking for. And basically you're just proving I think somebody that I know is kind of good way to look at this is almost like writing a love letter, right? Like you're writing your love letter to the school. Like, I love this school. Here's why. I've really thought a lot about this, right? And so that essay is kind of serving a slightly different purpose than, proving success in college and beyond, right? It's really like proving you're going to attend. That's more of what that essay is about.
Okay. I mean, you did talk about this earlier, but maybe just to summarize again, somebody is asking, and we have been spending the past 20 minutes or so talking about the more selective schools, but are these traits, the 5 traits and the academic personal score, really as important at non-selective schools?
Yes. So we talked a little about when essays matter, when they don't matter, right? So like, for example, like if you're applying to Georgia Tech and applying to, let's say, math instead of like an engineering program, so has higher admissions rates than, let's say, the engineering programs, they might just take you if you just have strong academics, right? Your essays, they really just may not matter, okay? And that's okay. And so, in that sense, it's like, okay, the personal score may not matter unless you like literally are including something in your essays that are signaling that you're kind of risky or just a bad person. Okay. Which some people, you'd be surprised, like people literally write stuff that you're like, this is like a bad person, right? In their essays. And those are the few people that get below the personal bar, right? Are those they like never accepted. And so in that sense, like it does sometimes matter less, right? And it all just kind of depends on the program you're applying to, the admissions rates at the school that you're applying to. Those are the things that do matter here. But it varies a lot by school. We always say though, like, look, if you're applying to schools with essays, supplemental essays, like you might as well put the effort in. You might as well, really put forth some strong effort. And ideally, like coaching was also helpful, like in terms of, maybe the essay ultimately didn't matter that to get into that school sometimes, right? But there might be essays for that school that might be for certain scholarships or other things like that, that are specific to that school that are also included in our programs. That can be helpful. But I just want to like mention that like a big piece of why you do this is like writing is a really important skill for the rest of your life. Okay. And this is such a high stakes time that your student will actually learn a lot about how to be a better writer. We frequently get comments from students and parents that are like, hey, my student learned more working on their college essays with their writing coach than they have in all of their years of English education. Those types of things. So it's also like a useful life skill, and your student will actually put forth the effort to do the work. And as I said, like I'm not like the type of person that's like, hey, if you're applying to University of Louisiana or University of Alabama and it's in state and you have like very good academic marks, like they may not even read the essay, right? It's possible, right? So I'm just kind of mentioning like, there's a chance that it's not relevant at all, and that's fine. But those 5 traits for any school that's considering any sort of personal traits or personal score or anything like that are relevant to every single student, right? It's the same traits that job applications and what employers look for. It's the exact same set.
There was a question about because the logistics of students working with prompt. Are they assigned one essay coach that stays with them the whole time?
Yeah, sorry if that was not obvious. Yes. So you get one application advisor and one essay coach, and you're working with that essay coach across all of your essays that you're working on.
And then there was a question just again about logistics. Somebody asked earlier, is anybody else like review the essays? Is it only the essay coach, or is there somebody like a head essay coach reviewer, that kind of looks things over?
So what we do is, we're obviously not having additional people look over every single essay, right? But what our coaches do and what they're trained to do is where they have questions about like how we would approach something, there's a mechanism in our system that sends it to that they select, that sends it to another writing coach for a second opinion that also adds their thoughts, right? And so we're actually also going back through all the, very frequently going back through a lot of the reviews and feedback that our essay coaches have provided, and coaching our essay coaches on how to do better as well. So we have like, a very, our essay coaches are all employees of ours. Okay. So they're not like contractors. And so in that regard, it's very different than a lot of other organizations. Like our essay coaches are supporting a lot of students each. So I just want to mention that. And so they see a lot of different essays. They go through over 20 hours of training before they can even be a writing coach for us. And that's just on the common application essay. They go through even more training and evaluation on every single other type of essay that they need to do and support students on.
Okay, I will just add my own personal comment. My youngest son worked with coaches at Prompt. It's almost now 2 years ago, which is crazy.
I was gonna say it's been a while.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago, and I'll be honest, he came with the essay kind of, at least a draft. He didn't necessarily need brainstorming help, but even kind of at the point at which he submitted the essay, the critique, the editing, the comments were excellent. It took it that next level of just, as Brett's been describing all night, of really somebody reading it and kind of saying, did you really need this? And actually this was interesting. And why didn't you share more, related to that experience? So, it's sometimes you need that third party objective person working with you to kind of really pick apart, that you might not be able to see. And even, people in your family that, you nicely want to help can't necessarily see, what should stay and what should be removed.
Yeah, I think the critical part of this is we aren't just like grammatical editors, right? We actually are really focused on content and structure and making stuff clear and concise, really important for us. And those are things that are extremely difficult skills. Which is why only 2% of the people that even apply to be writing coaches are writing coaches. And then it's also really important to understand what your audience is really looking for. Right, you can, you can have a friend or somebody of the family that's like, hey, this person's a journalist, a really good writer. Yes, and that person can probably be really helpful in a lot of ways from like a narrative, prose, that sort of perspective. But how do you actually tie that to what colleges are actually looking for, right? So you need to have a really solid understanding of the audience and a solid understanding of how to coach, right? It's the combination of things that's really, really important to having success here.
And the other thing I would just emphasize, and this is parent to parent, that, in terms of trying to start this process as on the early side is so much better for your family dynamics, for the anxiety in the house, honestly, and just with any project, and particularly writing, if your student can write it, take a little time away, come back to it, they will get such a better perspective on, what they're doing, and, come to it with cleaner eyes. If you have that time, as opposed to feeling the pressure of, oh my God, I've got to write this weekend. They're not going to produce the same quality of work.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing this. As I mentioned before, 90% of all applications are submitted within 48 hours of a deadline. Okay. And don't do that to yourself.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Number two is that the applications are structured very weirdly if you have never filled one out. And so a lot of times, like depending on certain questions you answer, different essays actually pop up that you have to write. So we hear a lot of horror stories of students that are like filling out the application. It's the night before, the night that the application is due, and they see an essay that they have not even written. Right. And they're literally just writing it on the spot. And as like the dean of admissions at University of Richmond would say is, I could tell.
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, I can tell that the essay was that supplement was written the night before, and it's like that's just a huge red flag to him, and that the student may not be successful, they may not want to go to the school. Like it's just big red flag, and kind of signals non-acceptance really. So focusing on that stuff earlier, you'll thank yourself, and your student will definitely thank you as well. You'll have a much more enjoyable senior year.
Okay.
Do we have anything else?
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
so
just
special
reading-
pricing, as I mentioned before, if you go to prompt.com/road to college, there's special pricing this evening only. That is an extra $10 off our one-on-one personal statement coaching, which is like the common application essay, or an extra $50 off doing 3 schools with us, or an extra $150 off, I think it is, if I do the math correctly, on all support on all of your applications for all of your schools. I would recommend doing that. Otherwise, the pricing lasts until Tuesday for just the regular discounts. But I highly recommend, if you're here tonight for this webinar, just go ahead and do that. As I said, if you're not happy with what you're getting, after your call with your application advisor and your call with your writing coach, we'll give you a full refund on it. And the reason why we do that is because basically that never happens, right? So that's kind of the general gist of it. But you can always schedule a call with one of our writing coaches if you have questions that you want to talk through stuff before making your decision.
So another question about the just the platform and the information on Prompt's platform. Is it updated, like when because we don't?
Yeah, we update the essay prompts every single year. We're starting to go through that process now, but if you're working with a writing coach, you will not work on any essays that are not currently confirmed as for this next application season. Okay. But we update that every year. Some of that starts getting updated over the next couple of months, and then really gets updated in earnest in early August when the common application for all the schools, except for maybe a few, are released. And then it's updated throughout the year, and you get notifications on that because sometimes schools change their essay prompts or word counts or other things. It's kind of annoying, but it happens.
Okay, one last clarification about the one-on-one package. Somebody's asking, does it include supplements?
Yep, it includes supplements. It's every single part of the application.
The one-on-one, right? So there's right.
Oh, just the for the personal statement does not include supplements.
Yeah.
It's just the common application essay. It does not include the activities list or the additional information section.
So it's the last two. If you scroll right,
yes,
it's
just the complete application. Yeah, the three schools are all
and
schools,
the all schools,
options.
right? Include
complete application options. And what's cool about that is, and you can see this here, is that it also, when we say supplements, there's certain extra essays that you might need to write for certain majors, programs, or school-specific scholarships. That's also all included. It does not include like third-party scholarships outside of the school, but it includes school-specific scholarships.
Honestly, that could be a huge deal if you're applying to, state schools or other schools that have honors programs that you kind of
the honors programs essays are included in this. A lot of schools might have like a Y major essay prompt for like engineering. If you're applying to an art program and you're writing a portfolio, creating a portfolio of your artwork, you also have an artist statement that you have to write. That's included in here. If you're applying to like some highly selective institutions, you might include like a maker portfolio of what you've made, or a resource portfolio, or those types of things. Those all include writing. All the writing elements are included with
you don't actually realize until you start this process how many things it's really a writing exercise. This whole process it's like, right, it's about being concise. Like every word matters because you don't have space to waste it.
Yeah, one of the funny things that we find ourselves doing is a lot of like the final reviews of essays that we do for students is like they're like, it's a 250 word essay, and they're like, I'm at 255 words. I can't find the last 5 words, and we're like, here's like 10 suggestions of words you can remove that are like not needed, right? and what's cool about that is you start getting really good at that yourself, right? Your student, right? Identifying like little phrases that they can remove, or ways to reword stuff, or sentences that can be removed that are unnecessary. These are all things that are really important in terms of the admission process, but are also really cool skills from like a writing perspective for life, right? And being like super clear and concise with what you're writing.
Okay, so you guys, which is perfectly fine. If you have more questions related to the packages, feel free there's a phone number right at the top of the URL of at prompt.com/Rhodes College, and they will definitely welcome talking to you and answering any questions to figure out which is the right package.
Yep, and I don't know if anybody like personally DM'd me in the chat as we were going here. If you did, you can just email me at brad@prompt.com, because I have not read your personal DM at all during this session, so apologies. Or you can schedule a time with our writing coaches, or we also have this chat thing down here. Looks like, I don't know if we have anybody on right now, but you can add your phone number and kind of include a message, and we'll get back to you. That's another way.
But I am going to emphasize, because I see this question keep coming up, the all schools package really is all the essays.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like I cannot emphasize that enough. And the one thing though that you'll find is that's pretty cool is that as your student, like once they get past like completing their first 3 or 4 applications, they kind of start seeing the patterns and the connections themselves. And our writing coaches are obviously supporting that along the way, but like our goal is for you to learn like and really dramatically improve your students' writing skills kind of along the way, through the coaching experience. And so you'll find that that's really valuable. And, we're focused on, early action, early decision. One of the cool things that we also do is, as our coaches, like one of our biggest weeks of the year is actually the last like week of December, right before the regular decision deadlines. We get a lot of people that come, but, we also have a program where you can decide if you want to keep working on your applications for a regular decision or wait to hear back from your early action or early decision schools. And then we'll work kind of the last 2 weeks of December with you on the other ones. If for some reason you don't get into an early action or early decision, that's something that does happen as well. And that's a kind of a nice choice you have with us, just because our folks actually do work over the holidays as well. It's actually one of our bigger weeks of the year. So.
And one last question: what's the ideal time to start with a coach? Do some start when school is over, or better to start early, which I'm assuming you're meaning now?
Yeah, it's like your own kind of choice right now. I would say the most important thing that you can do right now is basically spend the hour and a half kind of going through our application plan, an hour to hour and a half on their first call with your writing coach, because that will help you think through and identify things that you can do this summer, and start thinking through like, hey, what are some self-learning opportunities, or what are organizations, or what are things that you can kind of get involved with, or hey, maybe we want to be a journalist. Okay, go be a journalist, for a while, like start your own blog, do these different things. Like you start identifying these different ideas or these different things, and the sooner that you do that, the better. If you have a bunch of finals exams, like, okay, like work on studying those. Like don't start this before that. That's fine. But if you buy one of these packages, you choose when you want to start. Okay. And sometimes you might want to choose to start and just do your application plan, do the content, start the Common App essay later. Like that's a choice. It's really kind of your timeline, and you align on that with your application advisor. And then what that does is it just kind of allows us to kind of match, like, okay, this is the amount of work we know you're going to need from a writing coach, and then we know when you're going to start. So, and what your timeline is, so we can match that up. Okay. We have for those math geeks out there, we have an incredible linear optimization problem that we're running every year for capacity and demand planning. So that's all automated on our back end, but we just need to know basically when you're going to be doing the work.
All right. That's the MIT part of you coming out.
It is. It's weird. I'm a writer. I'm a math person. I don't know what you would call me. It's kind of weird that I went to MIT and run a writing coaching company, but that's what it is. Stuff happens. I used to want to be a roller coaster designer. I actually wrote one of my essays on that for MIT. Clearly, I do not design roller coasters. Like
I'm not quite sure how much of a,
Yeah, it was kind of a weird market. And, and the funny part is the on those like 3 to 5 sentences of notes on my application, that might have been a reason they wouldn't have let me in, because they actually wrote like he wants to be a roller coaster designer. I don't know how much MIT is going to help with that, be able to help with that. It's like, I am not a roller coaster designer. Don't worry. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
thank you all very
everyone.
much.
Thank you, Brad. And, take action, for yourself and for your students' sake. And any questions, call prompt and, they can help you work it out.
Yeah. And final thing is, like, if you start with 3 schools, you can always upgrade later. You just may not get the kind of the same pricing that's currently existing here. But we have a lot of students that just work with us on 3 schools. It's a really good option. It really just depends on kind of your choice and budget and what you're looking to do. All right.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Bye. Good
All
night.
right. Bye.